The following book release is a special SpoFest presentation.
Pink Trees Press presents Naming a Hurricane by Madeline Artenberg.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks so much for being here. This is a very special event for SpoFest. One of our favorite participating poets, Madeline Artenberg, has a wonderful book, as all of you here know, naming a hurricane, and we are celebrating and sharing from that book tonight. I am Rick Christiansen. I am your co-host. At this time, I'm going to do a little bio and introduce our special co-host with me tonight. Linda Kleinbub is the editor of Pink Trees Press, curator and host of Fahrenheit Open Mic, and founder of Pen Pal Poets. She's the author of Cover Charge on Autonome Media 2022. Linda was one of 6 local poets invited to read at the American Poetry Festival of New York in 2021. She received her MFA from the New School, and she, as I said, is the publisher of PTP. Consequently, she is the person responsible for this beautiful book, making it out into the world. It always takes 2. It takes the poet, and it takes somebody who can put their stuff out there, and Linda did that. So with no further ado, let me introduce Linda Kleinbub, who can tell us a little bit about how she got to here today on this journey with this book.
Hi, everybody. My name is Linda Kleinbub, and I am the founding editor of Pink Trees Press, and I'm really happy to be here, and I'm happy to be here with Rick and James from SpoFest, and the lovely Madeline Artenberg, whose book we're going to celebrate tonight with everybody here. I just want to give you a little background. Pink Trees Press began in 2012. I started creating handmade books. They were one-of-a-kind type of things. Actually, some of them were 7 at a time, then there were 20 at a time, and I started to make origami books, and I was able to make, many of them. So there's probably hundreds of these origami books. But in 2020, we made our first mass marketed book, and that was the Silver Tongue Devil anthology. And it was edited by myself and Anthony C. Murphy. And since then, we've published 3 collections of poetry, 2 memoirs, and we have 3 more books planned for this year. And our artist in residence is Linda Wolkin. She did the cover for this one, and she did the cover for Philip Giambri's Good Boy, Bad Boy, A Better Man, and for Pauline Finley's Dysfunction, a play on words and the familiar. I'm really honored that we're working on Jane LaCroix's book right now, and he and Park's book. And I'm hoping to have my own book on the press, because I don't even have my own book on the press yet as well. And we continue to grow, and we're focused on the writers from the New York City downtown scene. So with that, I'll give it back to Rick.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you again. And the work that PTP is doing is incredible. So it's kind of nice to see something that you started just a few years ago, watching it grow. And what I will say that you didn't say is every single thing that comes out of your publishing house is quality. And so, there are places out there that may have 30 books. You don't, but the ones you've got matter. And so keep it up. And one of those books that matter is Naming a Hurricane by our guest of honor tonight, who I would like to introduce at this time. Madeline Artenberg was a photojournalist and a street theater performer before she fell madly in love with poetry. After the first poem popped out, she sold all her cameras. And she is now a well-known performance artist of poetry in the New York City area. Her work appears in many publications, such as Rattle, McQueen's Quinterly. She was a semifinalist in Margie, the American Journal of Poetry Contest, a finalist in Mudfish 2020. One of her poems was nominated as Best of the Net 2020 by Poets Wear Prada. And, of course, her first full-length poetry book, Naming a Hurricane, published by Pink Tree Press, now available on Amazon Books. Everybody buy one if you haven't got one. This is a beautiful book. Madeline, thanks so much for allowing us to do this with you tonight.
I am thrilled and thanking James and Linda and Rick, and of course everyone who's on here and the readers that we're going to hear. I just feel honored and blessed. This is 30 30 years of work, and it just is a gift, and I'm giving this gift to the world. I really feel that what writers can do is make an impact in this world. We have so much to say, so much to learn and teach, and that's what my book hopefully is existing in the world to do that.
Well,
So yes.
I was going to say, you mentioned 40 years. This does, it
30.
reads, or 30, it reads almost like a memoir in many ways. And in fact, the order of the poems in the book and the order that we're reading tonight, I understand, it is approximately chronological in terms of the subject or what you were talking about at the time. These are poems that start earlier in your life and finish out a little closer to now. So that makes this a fascinating thing also.
I just
So
want to say one thing about that. It's funny that my life seems to mirror the stages of a hurricane, because actually what we were doing is the poems were following the arc of a hurricane. But I guess, it started out with disturbances, and then, storm, hurricane, this and that, and then dissipation. But look at that. You just taught me something.
well, Madeline, why don't you teach us something now yourself and share with us a couple of poems from the book that you've selected to read aloud to us this evening.
Thank you. Supper time. Mother never cooked like grandmother did. Her mother, Katie, with ingredients from scratch, took an hour to prepare, a whole morning to get done, filling the apartment with warmth. My mother reduced food to its driest, flattest state, broiled what should have been babied on top of the stove or tenderly minded inside. My mother would throw under the broiler flesh or fish, never look until edges curled into the same brown, no matter what it started out as, until it toughened up like a wrestler, punching my teeth and gums as I tried to chew. No sauce on top, no salt, no spices. I couldn't talk much for all the effort needed to eat the halibut or dry white chicken. I couldn't complain, couldn't ask for things I wasn't getting, like allowance or summer camp, couldn't plead with her to stop hitting me, stop screaming. All I could do was chew and chew, get through supper time.
Beautiful, thank you. What else you
Thank
got?
you. One more, art. I congratulate an acquaintance at a Soho gallery on his sale of a Basquiat. Father interrupts me, whispers from his grave, "How could you, daughter? Don't you remember?" I remember how he'd come home scribbled down to a nub, railing against paint spray vandals. How can they call that art kids have thrown all over the city trains? 40 years it took him to get from scrubbing train terminals to department boss. Then the bigwigs demoted him. Couldn't find the perfect paint remover for train and trestle explosions of color. Mocked by every kid with a can, too tired to stop mother's tirades. First, he suffered a stroke. Last, a heart attack. As the monitor pulsed to a stop, his hospital room filled with the light of firecrackers he'd set free as a boy on Hester Street. Thank
Wow,
you.
beautiful. Madeline, your words are always beautiful, but obviously you are a very, very experienced performance artist, because when you read your work, it takes it off the page and makes it even more alive. So that's the challenge for all of us that are here reading tonight. Can we read Madeline's beautiful work as well as she would have? I know I'm going to try. I know I'll fail. And with that, I will pass it to my special co-host tonight, Linda Kleinbub, who will be walking us through each of us having the honor of reading from this beautiful book.
Thank you, Rick.
All right. And first up, we will have Rick Christiansen, who will be reading At the Gorilla Forest. Rick Christiansen is a poet, co-host of SpoFest, and a member of the St. Louis Writers Guild. He lives in Missouri near his 8 grandchildren. Let's hear Rick.
Thank you so much. I chose this poem for a couple of reasons. One, it is one of the first poems of Madeline's that I became familiar with, and then it motivated me to write a poem that subsequently got published. And Madeline, when I read this and then talked to Madeline about it and then shared my experience, then she was like, we'll write it. And I did. But we're not here for that poem. We're here for this one. At the Gorilla Forest, Bronx, New York. 3 times I waved my right hand at the female gorilla standing before me, separated by a few inches of impenetrable glass. Each time I wave, she waits, as if deciding were I friend or foe. Then picks up her left hand, palm open, folds it closed, brown eyes searching mine, as if she were someone's grandmother, come here from the old country, couldn't speak the language, reaching out to her grandchild. My name and that odd little okay were all my grandmother could say in English. All along our walks to the live poultry market, neighbors interrupted us. I never knew if she were the mayor or the gossip from our Bensonhurst block. They hugged my grandmother's lumpy body. She filled their palms with slices of her famous blueberry cheese Danish, saving some for me. She would brush her leathery face across my cheek, kiss me on the forehead for being good, whisper, China, Madeline. I didn't understand, but the look in her eyes was sweet as her pastry. The female gorilla stands before me, gray hair on her hips, one arm wrapped tight around 2 young ones, the other hand returning my final wave. I feel her warm brown eyes pulling at me as I walk away, leaving her pressed to glass.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Pete Salamita. Pete will be reading The Gardener. Pete's book, Bitter Pill, was published in 2022. He attends readings throughout New York City, including with some musicians, the Bitter Pill Collective. Pete hosts a podcast, Storytelling on Orchard Street, which you could find on YouTube. Here we have Pete Salamita. And we will unmute you. Unmute yourself, Pete. You got to unmute yourself, Pete.
Got it. Sorry.
No worries.
I'm honored and grateful to be included in this reading with other truly gifted and talented poets in celebration of Madeline's debut book. Naming a Hurricane is filled with powerful, honest, and inspiring poetry with an abundance of love, heartbreak, hope, and triumph. Congratulations, Madeline. I chose The Gardener for a couple of reasons. For the tender and loving relationship she had with her grandmother, and I know how important that was to Madeline. And as a chef, I was connected to the food aspect of it. So this is The Gardener. I knew my grandma. Her plump spotted fingers could cajoling dough flat, sprinkling a cow's worth of farmer cheese into each blintz. I knew her naked on weekend mornings. I would tie and retie corset strings until the breasts no longer hung like worries as I bound them to her. I knew my grandma, but not her eyes, sunken, tending to a garden behind them. I knew her, but not the colors of the flowers or the land the garden grew in.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Bonnie Proudfoot. Bonnie will be reading Stouch's Baths, Coney Island. Bonnie was raised in Queens. Bonnie homesteaded in rural West Virginia and now lives in Athens, Ohio. She is the author of a book of poems, Household Gods, and a novel called Goshen Road. Here is Bonnie Proudfoot.
Thank you, and I love this book, and I'm going to continue the grandmother vein. These poems really spoke to my heart, and I feel like I was right there sharing the experiences. The language is so vivid in this book. It's a real triumph, Madeline, really, and congratulations. Okay, Stouch's Baths, Coney Island. Grandma rubs mercurochrome and mineral oil on my pale sand grit skin. I round my back, hide a hint of breast, shine like an orange jellied candy dipped in rock crystal sugar. I fill my pail, shovel out sand shapes. Bubby unwraps our lunch, onion and herring, seeded rye. Later, we return to Staunch's lockers. I unzip her skirt suit. Her arms can no longer reach back. She joins friends baking on the roof. This time I watch Grandma behind the tall slat wall. She removes the towel. Puckered flesh, naked, breasts swing, brown and full. I turn away, not knowing how to get back.
Thank you. Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you, Bonnie. Next up, we have Miriam Stanley, who will be reading Babel. Miriam Stanley joined the original Rogue Scholars in 1998. She has 5 collections of poetry published by Rogue Scholars Press and is in numerous anthologies, including Occupy Wall Street. Her 6th collection of poems will be released in August or September of this year. Take it away, Miriam.
Okay, you hear me? Good.
Yes.
So Madeline and I have known each other for, I don't know, decades.
Yep.
And yeah, and I love this book, and I chose Babel because of the references to Yiddish, which Madeline knows, I know quite a bit. So Babel. Yiddish was developed from Old High German in the 9th century. The Cambridge Encyclopedia, 2nd edition. Mach schnell, my boyfriend says in his best German general tone. Nudges me to hurry, make our train. Not that Mach schnell, not those trains. More like my grandfather calling me to steaming matzo ball soup. His thick glasses bogged, yarmulke askew. Soup of misshapen dumplings, rough-hewn carrots. Brothers accusing brothers born from the same broth. Needs a pinch of this, or too much of that. Bless those who do not live starched to the white page.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Miriam.
Thank
That was
you.
great. And next up, we have Maria Perez, who will be reading American in Cuba. Maria Perez Bustillo's work appears in Revista Dejada, Caribbean Review, America's Review, and others. Her novel, Back to El Dorado, was published by Florencanto Press in 2020. She coordinates Latino study groups at CUNY. Welcome, Maria, and unmute yourself.
Hola, everybody. This is such joy to be here. I feel that we're all flowers making this bouquet in words. And Madeline and I, we go back years and years. We were in Harry Ellison's poetry group for years and followed through, in so many ways.
Yeah.
Well, this poem, American in Cuba, really spoke to me because I too had been very impacted by my trip to Cuba. American in Cuba. At the Museo Bellas Artes Havana, preschoolers tell me their families bring them here often. Everywhere, girls and women like strutting bouquets in hand-sewn cotton dresses. Boys and men, heads under hoods of 50s American cars, breathing deep the smells of Miami. I stroll near the hotel, arm myself with "No me moleste" and "Policía, ayúdeme, por favor." A dark-skinned young man approaches, speaks little English. I understand him to say, "Need your help, don't want your money, give you my pesos for dollars. Good things only in dollar stores. Please, pretty lady." He shows me his ration coupons, hardly enough, begs me to help him. I am considering his request when La Policía swoop out, slam him into a wall, ask for his papers, my passport, and whether he's bothering me. No problema, I say, but they drag him off. He calls out, I just wanted to talk to you.
Whew.
Great job,
Thank you,
Maria.
Maria. Thank you.
And next up, we have Maria Noeda reading Old Pictures. Maria writes poetry and short stories, both literary and genre. Her work has been published in top flight magazines online and in print, as well as in honored competitions. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you. Okay.
Oh, you got muted, Maria. Unmute yourself again. There you
Okay.
go.
Old pictures. My grandmother would have carried grandfather if her back were better. She did everything else for him. After her death, the police kept hauling him, lost and bewildered, back to our house. He crawled out again and again to look for her. My mother-in-law tended to her starched husband. She died still praying he would go first, but for nosy neighbors, he'd have starved facing filled cupboards. I sit in front of 2 laden plates on the kitchen table. My husband is very late. His key turns in the door. He's pleased I haven't eaten.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Amy Barone. Amy is going to read Ode to an Acorn. Amy Barone's poetry collection, Defying Extinction, was published by Broadstone Books in 2022. New York Quarterly Books published her book, We Became Summer. She has 2 chapbooks, Kamikaze Dance and Views from the Driveway, and she is a poet in Pennsylvania and in New York. She's 2 states, and she's here with us tonight. Thank you for being here, Amy. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm really honored and delighted to be part of this. Naming a Hurricane is really a rich and powerful book. I enjoyed reading every poem, and I'm listening to the poems tonight is like revisiting them. It's a gem. And again, congratulations, Madeline.
Oh,
I
thank you so much.
chose Ode to an Acorn because it melds family, nature, and a revered object. Ode to an Acorn. I took you from his gravesite on the day of the unveiling. You, hard on the outside, father barely wrinkled. Perhaps you were in his knickers when he escaped on a steamer bound for Ellis Island, rattled around when he stopped short, fell out of his suit pocket when they lifted the casket. Little Acorn, on you is writ, here lies a life not fully lived. You are planted on my shelf next to books of my poetry father never got to open.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Peter Kozlowski. Peter is a good friend of Pink Trees Press. He is a videographer for all of the live book parties we've had so far, and he was a big help at the Poetry Festival a couple of weeks ago. Peter Kozlowski was also a taxi driver, a delivery man, a poet, a printer, a singer-songwriter. He's published in Hobo Jungle, Soul Flow Pojo, anthologies by Great Weatherford Media, Poetry Bay, The Unbearables, and he is a silver-tongued devil. And we're happy to have him here tonight. Welcome, Peter.
Okay, you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Peter.
The poem is called From Nothing. Thank you, Father, for 6 months of silence after I broke curfew. I begged and begged you by paper airplane and alphabet soup to talk to me. And when you finally spoke, it was breakfast choices, math equations. There were whispers of your long ago escape in a hay wagon, the hasty voyage to Ellis Island for an 8-to-a-bed life on Hester Street. I wanted to hear more, but you didn't talk about the forced rifle curfews, breaking of glass in Proskorov, a sister's legs gang smashed, history on which to hang the 6-sided yellow star you gave me for graduation. I inherited your flat feet. Thank you, Father. They led me to fields of rustling quills and an emptied sky on which to write.
Thank you, Peter.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Betty Pierre, who's going to be reading Plain Jane. Betty Pierre is a Haitian poet, social work activist, lyricist, writer, and lives in the Bronx. She is the author of Babel and the feminist poem, Who is Jane? Welcome, Betty Pierre.
Hi, thank you,
Hi,
Madeline.
Betty.
Just so
Oh,
happy
Betty,
to
thank
be
you.
here. The book is beautiful on the inside and the outside.
Oh, thank you.
So I always say that a lot of women are Jane. Plain Jane. Plain Jane, they call her. I don't need any of you, she'd say. Today, she belongs to a choir. Sunday morning, her white robe glistens. Underneath, Jesus soothes the fresh welts darkly rainbowed. He forgiveth her sin of plainness, her sins of Saturday night. Pierced, collared, bound, she waits, center stage, whips ascend, descend. Her breasts sway from sting after sting. Her back and arms receive the offerings. Thighs accept the love, melt with every stroke. Forgive me, Jesus, she intones. On Sunday, I'm yours. On Saturdays, I'm the anointed. Plain
Woo.
Jane.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Betty Pierre. That was great.
Thank you, Madeline.
Next up, we have Dee Dee Champagne, who will be reading on Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. Dee Dee Champagne has performed on New York City stages for almost 40 years, including CBGB's. She has performed her poetry at ABC No Rio and other venues. Her book of poetry and artwork is called Life of a Kalamata, and it's a beautiful book. And we welcome Dee Dee Champagne. Unmute yourself, Dee Dee.
Okay, thank you so much. The reason why I chose this poem was because while I was in college in the 70s, I met Aaron Copland, and he was mentioning Stravinsky. And at the time, I was playing violin, and I do recall this symphony. And once again, I'm so honored to be on this panel and reading through this beautiful book by Madeline. So I chose this book, Stravinsky's Rites of Spring.
Thank you.
My hips sway forward, float back. Butterflies flutter through notes. Snake, my feet bound me to earth. My neck bobs, arms buoy. Sounds sip at my loins. I unfurl in petaled clarions. Thank you so much for this beautiful time.
Thank you,
Thank
Dee Dee,
you,
for
Dee
being
Dee.
here.
Thank you.
Next up, we have J. Lois Diamond, who will be reading In the Face of Uncle Jim. J. Lois Diamond is a poet and a playwright who featured at Cornelia Street Cafe. Her poetry was published in various anthologies, including the recent Stained, and you can find her at jloisdiamond.com.
It's an honor to be part of this event, to read another one of Madeline's fabulous poetry, and it was hard to choose. They're all so wonderful. In the face of For Uncle Jim, we are waiting for a good man to die. His sentence not swift enough. He won't answer the phone. Let us tell him his deep voice had sung us into family. At last, an audience is granted. He's thin as the rake he dragged through fields as a boy. Heavy-lidded, he cannot look at us. Heavy-tongued, he cannot speak. A good man has died, his body no longer lit by radiation. Dirt covers his casket until the final sliver of oak disappears. Tonight, the silent moon wears his face.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you very much, J. Lois. And next up, we have Austin Alexis, who will be reading Illumination. Austin Alexis is the author of Privacy Issues and 2 chapbooks. New work from him appears in Crosswood Poetry Journal, Westchester Review, Maintenant, and in 10 by 10 Flash Fiction. Welcome, Austin. Unmute yourself. You have to hit the unmute. It's a little blue button. You should see it. Austin. You have to unmute yourself, Austin.
I'm sorry, something happened.
There
Can
you
you hear
go.
me now?
Yes, perfect. Go ahead.
Well, thank you so much for asking me to be in this celebration of Madeline's wonderful book. I've known Madeline for over a decade. I remember her from Joshua Meander's Nomad's Choir reading series.
Yes.
One thing I like about her poetry is that she uses some of the strategies and elements of fiction. Sometimes her characters go through arcs, and also she has a wonderful feeling of suspense, which is a quality we don't normally associate with fiction. I chose this poem, Illumination, because it does have, more than some of the other poems, a feeling of suspense. Illumination. Empty, unlit street, deep cough behind her. Quick, quick, slow, slow. He follows a queen's beat, drawing even closer. She pictures one swarthy arm bandoleered across her chest, the other rifling through her. Her heart beats like a racehorse overtaking the lamp-lit intersection. He's crossed to the other side, escaping the frame she's put him into. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Lehman. Lehman Weisselbaum is going to read The Crow. He is a poet, reporter, critic in alternative and mainstream outlets. He is also the associate editor of Home Planet News. Welcome, Lehman.
Thank you. I've got The Crow. The Crow. It opens with a citation from the Encyclopedia Britannica. Hitler committed suicide in a bunker on April 30th, 1945. We followed his shrapnel tracks across Western Europe. If only we could track back, his acts might be undone, back to when he spoke through an artist's palette, not yet with blood-soaked tongue. When he looked into the pool of Narcissus, stony eyes glowering, did he enchant the flocks around him to see an Aryan god? Too easy, he might have thought, more challenging to turn skin to lampshade, bone to ash. Natur ist grausam, he said. Nature is cruel. Oh, murder's captain, scavenger of remains, when the crow goes into a deep hole and he is finally done, may veiled eyes see.
Thank you, Lehman.
Nicely done, Lehman. Good to have you here. Next up, we have J.R. Turek, or Judy, if you know her personally. Welcome, Judy. Judy's going to be reading In the Company of Spiders. J.R. Turek is a Long Island Poet of the Year, mentor, editor, mentor, workshop leader, author of 7 books of poetry, the most recent Dog Speak. The Purple Poet has written a poem a day for 19 years. Very impressive. Welcome, Judy.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Judy.
I'm delighted to be here. I have so many favorites in this book that it was tough to pick. Kudos, Madeline. I chose this poem for the love of finding friendship through a book and overcoming loneliness. And that was just wonderful. I love the poem. I don't love spiders. So that's kudos to you. And I do hope that we meet in person soon, Madeline. I do hope.
Yes, we will. Yes. Thank you, Judy.
In the Company of Spiders, for Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. At least once a week, Mother's face looks like she's killing Cossacks. I give up, arms folded over my head, slapping and scratching. She exhausts herself, then hugs me. I go limp. She calls me cold fish. I can't talk to classmates, neighbors, cousins. I don't care. I have plenty of friends. My favorite is Charlotte, waiting for me under the bed. One night I opened my book to lonely Wilbur, the pig, meeting Charlotte, the spider. When he hears he'll be Christmas dinner, he cries out, I don't want to die. Suddenly, neither do I. Charlotte and offspring weave brave, strong, and loved into their webs for Wilbur and me. In the Company of Spiders, poems are woven from my diaries, friendships from paper dolls. Mother's hands turn arthritic. I finally stop them in midair. Today, tomorrow, I'll swing my spider legs across the land, Charlotte by my side, weaving, weaving.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great poem. All right, that was great, Judy. Thank you. And next up, we have James Romano, who last but not least, James will be reading Rock Chick Sonata. James Romano is an advocate, poet, events host and organizer, photographer, poetic journalist, charter member, Norma Miller Society Performance Art Association staff member and host, Friends of the Queen's Library, and Cinematic Wonder. James does a lot of work. James Romano, thank you very much for being here with us today. And you could unmute yourself and let's hear your poem.
Linda, I still don't see James.
He was here.
Hello.
There you are. Hi.
Okay. Hello. Good
Hello.
evening.
Hi, James.
It's an honor to be among all of you tonight, but especially to honor Madeline. I chose a specific poem, which was Rock Chick Sonata, because of something that links us all through time, which was rock and roll. And you could flash back to the Velvet Underground, rock and roll, and walk into the Fillmore East or Thompson Square Park when there was poetry, music, and revolution in the air. And I want to thank her for being the rebel that she was and still is now and then, and all of you. So thank you, Madeline, for being that outspoken femme. And I like to read Rock Chick Sonata. I listened to the top 40 muted under the pillow, so mother wouldn't yell. Kept the list of each song and artist,
put an asterisk when Mary the K announced, moving up to number 1, Janis Joplin, Piece of My Heart. When Mother's tirades ended with my arms scratched bloody, I squeezed the wounds, dipped in a pinky smear on the bedroom wall, the words rock and roll. Prayers turned to a frenzy, leather and runaway hair. I washed them away before the door was thrown open and the smell of Wheaton wafting in. After breakfast, Mother scrubbed the floor where the piano once stood, sold for marriage, along with her gold medals for Tchaikovsky, etched with the year Mother was 14. When I finally towered over her, I played air guitar at my wedding. Now, when Mother visits in dreams, she cries me a broken record. Don't you see why I scratched my sonatas on your skin? You were my Carnegie Hall.
Thank you, James.
Thank you very much, James. That was really a wonderful way to, I think that was a very powerful way to end, if you ask me. Madeline's book is available on Amazon, and Madeline also, I think, will sell you a book directly, and probably, I think you don't mind mailing it. If people contact you, right, they can pay you via online.
Absolutely.
And so if you want an autographed copy, you can reach out to Madeline through Facebook Messenger, Madeline Artenberg, and we're gonna give it back to Rick, I think, right now.
You bet. I
Thank you,
wrote down about halfway through all of these poems. I think we know the name of the hurricane. It is Madeline Artenberg. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful work. We have a few minutes, a few more minutes than I expected. So we have the opportunity to open the floor to some questions for Madeline. If you have anything that you would like to ask her or anything additional that you would like to share, throw your hand up on Zoom and I'll be looking for the little hands to show, and then we'll call you out and you'll unmute and you'll talk a little bit. But we've got about 15 minutes to finish. So do I see any hands up? I am looking, scrolling through.
I'm gonna begin with a question to ask Madeline just to kick it off.
Fantastic.
Madeline, in this process of putting the book together, we worked on it in about 6 months, I would say. Did you have any? Did you feel like you learned anything from your poetry as you worked with it so closely over that period of time?
First of all, bless you. Yes, it was 6-7 months for sure. The way it was organized in the stages of a hurricane, and the last stage is dissipation, I could crystal clear finally see growth and transformation. I mean, I know how much I've transformed, but to see it in my work where, poems at the beginning were, about my mother and complaining, and then I was able to step out of the poem and be an audience, as if I'm watching a play, and understand things about her that I didn't get when she was alive. I only got it from the poems. And then it transformed until it's still a love-hate relationship, but it's healed. And that whole last section is about healing a lot of different themes that are in the book. So thank you, Linda.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm still looking for hands here, guys. I don't see any others, but I do have a question for you.
Pete has a hand.
Oh, there we
people
are.
Waving.
Okay.
We got
J. Lois Diamond, and then after you, Judy Turek will be next.
And then Pete had his hand up also. So go ahead.
Yeah, I love that comment, Madeline. I have a question. How did you come up with the concept of the hurricane? Because these poems, some of them you wrote a long time ago. Did that just pop into your head when you looked at the collection, or is it something that you were thinking about for a long time?
Great question. There is a poem in the book called Naming a Hurricane. And being a part of this incredible publishing house that Linda has put together, Linda actually, I was thinking of other titles. Linda said, I think Naming a Hurricane would be a good title for this book. And also another member of our Pink Trees family, Pauline Finley, she said, maybe you should organize it something to do with hurricanes, because I was like going to do mother and father and this and that, but the poems are so rich, they had so many things in them, it was even hard to organize them that way. So as soon as she said that, I'll harken back to what I said at the beginning. My life seems to have followed these stages of a hurricane, as does the book. And so the organization of it is just incredible. I love it, and I'm glad other people do.
Yeah, I want to add too, that was definitely Pauline Finley suggested that. And in the beginning, Madeline's work was really stellar. I mean, her poetry is really, we heard tonight, it was really fantastic. But the order was like a mishmash. And when you read it from the beginning to end, it was a mishmash, and it really was kind of, chaotic. And when Pauline suggested doing it in the phases of the hurricane, and I gave it back to Madeline, I said, Madeline, let's go with that. And Madeline ordered it that way. The entire book fell into this beautiful, thing. And that's one of the things I love about working with this press, is the editing process behind the scenes. We didn't change any of her poems, or it maybe a little bit here and there. It was just like how we ordered it, and it really came out great. So next up we have Judy.
Next we have Judy, and then Dee Dee Champagne's got her hand up after Judy.
Super, thank you. And so, yeah, I think a lot of question is on that process. And I'm wondering how long it took to get to, oh, well, here are the poems, but then finding that process, the themes that just literally blow through the book. How far into the process was that?
Couple of months.
I started 7 months before, because I'm a hoarder of files. I'm not a hoarder of whatever, but files, yes. And the interesting thing is I had written, because it's 30 years and I was much younger, so I had written things that I didn't even know I wrote, like you write in a trance. So there was about 80 of those that like, who the hell wrote these things? And then I rescued a whole bunch of them. And then I had the ones that I had been reading, through the years. So I was wrangling all this stuff. But as soon as we got away, as Linda said, from doing like mother, father, sex, this, that relationship, as soon as I found the terminology, for the hurricanes, because the different newscasters call them like different ways, stages. As soon as that, it was like butter. It just fell into place, because again, it turns out that the arc of my life and the arc of the healing that I had to go through, it followed the stages of a hurricane.
It's a brilliant metaphor, brilliant, and it works. So
thank you, Judy.
And Dee Dee, you have a question? Unmute, please.
You gotta click on them.
Unmute.
No, you gotta.
There we go.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you. Yes, I was been reading through your book. I feel so honored to be part of this group, and these poems are just so magical. There was one on page 65, you mentioned in the poem Blessed Work, good thing my aunt taught me the 3 R's. What are the 3 R's?
Let's see, page 3 R's.
Page 65.
Right. That's a good, I think it's like reading,
writing, arithmetic.
Exactly. Reading,
writing,
okay. Arithmetic. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you
Rick.
so much. Thank you very much. I loved that.
Okay, I'm looking for any other hands here. Oh, yeah, there's Pete.
And then
Linda, you're after Pete.
Okay.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, Pete, thanks.
So a few months ago, Madeline was on my podcast, Storytelling on Orchard Street. I'm not bringing this up for a plug, but I just want to say that it was an incredible interview. She was very powerful, very honest. And if you are enjoying her book, that interview really brought to life the book, her life. She was very open and honest, kind of blew me away. And I think after tonight, you should go listen to what she had to say. It's on You can see it on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And I thank her for being a great guest.
And I'll put it on the Pink Trees Press Facebook page. So if you have a hard time finding it, I'll post it on there so you can find it.
And I just want to say that, Pete, you are one of the best interviewers I've ever been interviewed by. It's just like being, hanging out in the restaurant in New Orleans, just the conversation, you're really wonderful. And I appreciate that interview. Yeah, it was a really good one. And I'm glad that, your own work I start, hearing you out in open mics doing your own work. So that's great.
Okay,
Thank
Linda?
you.
Hi there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's a
No,
couple
you're
of
good, Linda.
Hi, Linda.
Hi, Madeline. What my favorite part of, I've listened to your poetry over a couple of years, and I have enjoyed getting to know you and your bravery and your willingness to share your innermost thoughts. But what I wanted to say to you was, watching you respond to the reading, such love in your eyes, such kindness, such appreciation for the people that read for you. And that's what comes across in your poetry as well. I mean, I know it was a hurricane, but the way that people read it for you was just so beautiful. And I just wanted to say that.
Oh my gosh, that's so lovely. Thank you. Yeah.
Margaret, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Maria.
Yeah, I was wondering who her big inspiration is. Like, who inspired you the most in the book?
You're talking about other writers?
Yeah, other writers,
yeah.
members, anybody that really was a influence for this book.
Yeah. First of all, as soon as I started writing, and not even knowing what the hell I was doing, I just threw myself into open mics. So I would say the whole poetry community, everybody brave enough to get up there and just try this and that. The first 6 months when I was reading, and I got features like within a month or something, and I only had like 5 poems, and my legs were jelly. I was shaking, all the pages fell down. I was such a mess, and I used to cry. The poem that I read, Supper Time, it starts out, people were laughing, I'm punching my teeth and gums like a wrestler. They're laughing, and I'm muttering, what are they laughing for? Stop laughing. The audience taught me what is in my poems, that it's real life. It goes from happy to sad to this to that. So I've learned so much from everybody. And then let's say one poet that inspires me a lot. I mean, many do, but Sharon Olds, because I saw her many years ago, and she has a poem where she's on the floor, and you don't know she's on the floor, but she's describing dust, and it turns out she's on the floor because I think it was her mother or father, I forget which, had knocked her down. And she has a lot of poems about abuse and all that. And she's so brave and open. And I've seen her many times. So that's what I want to say.
Cool. Okay, I am going to take host's prerogative. We're close to running out of
has
time.
a quick, we can get to Maria.
Oh yeah, quick. And then, okay, cool. What you got?
Yeah, hi. A little bit about mentors. Yeah.
Mentors. Yes. Okay. So Maria is one of my dearest, oldest friends. It's 29 years now, and we were mentored by a wonderful Harry Ellison, who has since passed away. And he was so brilliant. He was a poet, but he was also he was also a theologian. So he would blend, he would read us pieces from the Bible and a lot of the poetry, and just blend lessons about, the news of the day and poets and just everything all together. And we're eating, and just, it was like a big buffet. So he was definitely one of my mentors. And another one was Rabbi Swiss, Harold Swiss. He's since passed too, but he was a rabbi, and he would have he was a poet. He had belly dancers when he was doing his, sermons, belly dancers, and he would be playing fiddle, guitar, and this and that. So I just always gravitated to people who allowed themselves, because growing up, I did not allow themselves to step out of themselves and just let all the creativity in and out, and just, so those are two main ones.
Fantastic. Well, folks, this hour has gone by really, really quickly. We've heard some beautiful, beautiful work. And I would, on behalf of Linda and Madeline, I want to thank everybody else for joining us here tonight. It has been, I think, an event almost as good as the book. Not quite. The book is so wonderful. Madeline, it is a joy and a pleasure to share your work with the world. Yeah, you're an exceptional poet, an exceptional communicator. The thing that really struck me tonight, a lot of poets, they're good on paper or they're good when it's read out loud. Your work consistently is wonderful in both formats. Listening to people read these poems out loud tonight, they have so much power on the page, but it is augmented by having others in there. So and hearing those interpretations. So this is, a book of thousands of poems in a way, because it is going to be read by so many people, and each of them is going to take their own piece from it. So with that, thank you to everyone.
I want to say one fast thing. The way everybody read my poems was just incredible. And I also forgot one of my main mentors. I've been studying with Esther Weiner, my teacher, since 2006. So that is very big influence. And thank you, Rick and James and Linda, and everybody. You read so wonderfully.
And where anybody's allowed to unmute, so can we give Madeline a round of applause as we close out the show?
Yay!
Congratulations on such a beautiful book, Madeline.
Beautiful show. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Okay, folks, I think that is a wrap.
Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Thank you, Rick.
Good night, everybody.
Everybody, take care. Thank you.
Thank you to James.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, James. Thank you.
Thanks, Madeline.
Rick.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you all. Beautiful reading.
Be well, everybody.
Turn off the video.